about the last
Thank
minute.
you to all of our panelists. I'd like to start off the question portion with one from the community. Can you tell us, you've all mentioned communication in some way. Can you tell us about your experience communicating with loved ones, either while you were incarcerated or communicating with someone while incarcerated? Tell us what that experience was like, and maybe what barriers exist, what advice you might give to community members here as they try to maintain a relationship with loved ones.
He wants a copy of that.
Yeah, and any of you can start answering, and please, pass to your fellow panelists as they want to answer as well.
Where Matt is, North Central, he's at the honor camp there, which I've said already. There are 3 phones in his dorm. There are about 500 guys in his section. There are 3 phones where he is, and then 3 phones on the other side of the building, I guess. So for 500, a little over 500 guys, there's a total of 6 phones. Back when phones were $1 to connect the call and then 25 cents a minute, unless you had a number, a Google number, which is almost impossible to get from a prison town, but unless you had a number set through one of the other million phone companies, where a phone call only cost about $1.50. Back when phone calls were $1.50 for the 15 minutes, phones were harder to get to. Wait, that's not right. Back when phones were more expensive, he could call home more often. Now that there have been some laws passed where the phones, they can't gouge the prisoners, and phones are less expensive, it's harder for him to get to the phone because people who before were not able to make phone calls, now they can make phone calls. The JPay kiosk, where he was, they have a little thing that they can, it's like a smartphone, but not smartphone, where they can type their messages and then plug it into the kiosk and send it out and back. Yeah, here's the JPay. There's the app. The kiosk that they have in there, I've never actually seen the kiosk. That was broken for about 2 months and never got fixed. So I was sending Matt all kinds of messages on JPay, not hearing anything back. And he'd call and say, "Oh, hey, did you get my email?" No, she's still broken. And of course, MTC, called Management Training Company, or Management Training Corporation out of Utah, is managing North Central. So they have no incentive to fix anything because that cuts into their corporate profits. Anyway, so the barriers he can't get to the phone because there are a lot of guys who want to use the phone. And then sometimes the JPay message thing is working and sometimes it doesn't. As far as visitation goes, on the website for North Central, it says you can call between these hours. You can call. Good luck getting anyone to answer. So what I do is I call Utah, and I say, "Hey, I think the phones are broken. Can you call can you call an internal line and make sure that the person manning the phone isn't dead?" And that's how I get through the scheduled visits with Matt. It works pretty well. Because he's at the honor camp, I don't have to schedule my visits. I can call and say, "Hey, is there any opening on Sunday?" And usually there is. When he was for the short time that he was in the big section that wasn't the honor camp, I had to schedule. You're not allowed to schedule more than 60 days out, but they didn't have any openings that were less than 59 days out. And sometimes, that 59 day out, whatever, somebody's got that. So for the month or so where he was next door, visiting was not an option because you couldn't visit. But the couple times that we actually did get to visit there, the room was completely empty. And I was like, how are there no visitation openings? So the challenge is getting through on the phones to visit. Now what I do is when we go to visit, we drive over to the office and I walk in and I sit there and I take a number and they say, "Next," and I go up and they say, "Oh, you don't have to take a number to schedule a visit." And I say, "Well, if I didn't take a number, I'd have been sitting there for an hour until you acknowledged me."
Okay, the difference from my first incarceration and the one I just recently been released from is I was far away from home. And visitation was very limited because my mother was ill and she didn't have the proper transportation to come see me versus here in Toledo, which is in the city. And it meant a lot to me to be able to have my mother sit across from me and explain what's going on in her everyday life, as well as do the same as well in return. My brothers, when they come visit, and friends, it's real easier being closer to home versus far away. Because it seems being far away, you're just left alone. And you're still around people who you just really don't know, you cannot trust, because, I say, everybody your friend is not your friend. And there's always an alternative mode. So basically, when I'm far away, I pretty much stay to myself. And having that communication between family and friends means a great deal, because it helps a person not become bitter. Like, man, we're supposed to be family. You just turn your back on me. I don't like you. I don't want to be around you. F you. People have them thoughts. So communication between your families and friends is very important to those that are incarcerated, as well as when they get out. So I say that's really a strong thing that we all should continue to do, because it'll help out in the long run.
I can just say, on my end, coming from like a family perspective, going to visit my father, I remember being little and just the long, because he was far away too, he was in Evansville. I remember the long trips and then finally getting there. And at the time, when he was there, it would just be like maybe one day of visiting, maybe two, but then there would be long stretches in between our visits where I wouldn't be able to see him again because he was so far away. So that was pretty hard on us.
Bianca, to follow up, what was your relationship like with your father? You mentioned that he was incarcerated for 22 years of your life. So how did those barriers to communication affect your relationship, and were you able to maintain a strong relationship?
So my relationship with my father when I was young, because back then they didn't have JP or anything. We just had phones or letters, and I remember getting like pictures from him and getting the calls and just the visits. But my connection with him was very, very limited. So I didn't really have too much of a relationship with him. But I knew that, when I pictured my father, as a little girl, my picture of him was always just in jail. That's what I knew growing up. That's all I knew growing up, was just visiting him, and he had his uniform on, and I could sit with him, but he couldn't go home with us. Not until I was an adult, then we started getting closer. And even when he came home, when I was 14, he came home, and I went back to live with him. So he was a single father raising a 14-year-old daughter with lots of attitude, and he didn't know what to do with me. So that was really tough on our relationship, because we had to build a relationship again. And he would tell me all the time that, he would get frustrated, and I'd hear him say, I just want to go back to her. I didn't have all these problems when I was inside, because he came out, and he had a lot of family support when he came out, but he just wasn't prepared to meet all of the new barriers that he had to face once he was released. But eventually, like I said, when I was an adult, we started picking up a better relationship.
Thank you. Are there any questions from audience members?
Yeah, I have a question. This may go more towards Joe. You were talking about like the Ridge project, and that some of the things that you would do, then you had to have been through the Ridge training or whatever, and so it was sort of exclusive to that. And I know that similar is true for Inside Out and People for Change, the educational group there, that you have to have been through an Inside Out class. I'm just curious, are there enough programming that's really just sort of that's available to anybody, where you're not excluded for not having gone through certain things, and what sort of training or what sort of programming should there be that there isn't right now?
That's a great question.
So the question for anyone who wasn't able to hear, is there ample programming for incarcerated people who, for the general population? Joe mentioned the sort of honor system where if you do certain things, if you participate in certain programs, more opportunities to participate open up. And so I think Ken's question gets at general programming, what is there? What is available for the general population?
I'm glad you asked that question, Ken. During this incarceration, I was a bugaboo to a lot of people because the program these days are very limited. The things that a person incarcerated needs to know to survive in society, they don't provide them with. And the things that other programs such as People for Change, Summer the Ridge Project, and other organizations that may come in, they put roadblocks up. And they shouldn't, because it's supposed to be about rehabilitation. But if you're not allowing these programs to do what's needed to be done, how could you really rehabilitate somebody? You know, it could be a guy that's, say, for instance, doing 25 to life. They look at him as he's never going to get out. Look at Willie. He was doing, 15 to life? And he came home. They won't let them type of guys get any type of program, whether it's education, college, or anything. You never know what may happen. The judge might wake up and say, or I think he's innocent, and let him go. Or some new evidence may come up in his case where it proves he's innocent. But he wasn't given that opportunity after doing 14, 15 years of not being able to get in no type of programs. How could he succeed in the world when he don't know nothing? You know, they could say, oh, technology changed. When the kiosks, the JPEGs first went up, one of the unit managers told me, oh, you don't know about the technology had changed. I took a computer repair class. There's nothing you can tell me about gadgets. I love gadgets. So when the guy came in to show people, I knew everything about this computer and I ain't never seen it. So how could you tell me? Because, wow, I was driven to educate myself. And I sent numerous of kites, which is the kite system that Ron, I think it was Ron, the guy, ODRC, the director was here talking about.
Norm.
Constantly pestering them, getting certain programs. And I was fortunate that I wasn't doing that much time to get involved, but I'm not just thinking about myself. What about those guys who really need these things? You know, they'll put a guy that's 21 in the education program to get his GED versus a guy that's 35, maybe getting out sooner than the guy that's 18 or 19. It should be equal for us all. It's very hard for them guys to actually get into programs, especially when it's limited. They had college in Toledo Correctional. They took it out. Why? You don't want them to see the knowledge that they need to succeed in life? For the inside out. When I was a part of that, oh God. So many roadblocks we had to go through, and I think it's more of the staff who raised the awareness. Oh no, you can't do this, no, you can't do that. When in actuality, what's the harm in it? You're educating people. You're trying to help them better themselves. You're not trying to help them better themselves. As long as you don't give up, and everybody from the community and family members, friends, all we pull together, that support is stronger than just what they doing in incarceration. You know, staff just don't care. You do a paycheck. That's an adult daycare. They just sit there paid to watch you. Make a few rounds, that's it. You sit down.
Go ahead. You had more to say?
Oh, no.